because moms need to know this. If more moms knew this, then more moms could potentially have more time with their kids, have better
Yes.
quality of life, maybe
Yes.
take a break, take their family on more vacations while house hacking. Like, this can improve your quality of life. Hi, this is Danielle and
Kyra.
And you're listening to ScrunchyFi, a show by mamas for mamas. Here we cover all the creative ways to make money, save money, and invest to reach financial freedom and live the life you want.
We are talking about retire by 40. You just posted a really cool article about, can you retire early? And we have been talking about financial independence, and that is retiring early, having enough passive income to cover your living expenses. And that's what ultimately retiring is. Typically, people want to retire and not work anymore. They've had a long career of like 40 years, and they just want to step away from the work environment and finally relax and live their life. So what we are doing as FIRE, Financial Independence Retire Early, we are fast tracking that retiring saving process so that we can retire early if we want, at least have that financial independence, financial security. So this is our working career. We save over 50% of our income within this time frame so that the rest balance of our life, we can make work optional.
Yeah.
So let's talk about retire by 40. That's our goal. We both are calendar marking that we are able to retire by 40, which is for me in the next 4 years. And for you, what is that like? Let's round it up. But I mean, because you're 5 years for you. Okay. Because you have a birthday coming up. So I just had a birthday.
I mean, age-wise, I guess you could say by 37 or 38. Somewhere in there.
Okay. So you're going to retire before 40.
Well, I could retire before 40. I like my career. So I don't see myself retiring in the traditional sense. However, I will have the option to retire or to scale back or to start new ventures without having to worry about a steady paycheck from a employer or even self-employment income.
Right. Retire optional.
Yes.
Awesome. So why is it that we can retire optional, retire early by 40? Do we have rich parents? Did we win the lottery? Are you like a CEO? Do I work in IT?
What? Do I look like a CEO? No.
Yeah, the answer is no. We are pretty average income earners. We haven't done anything that far out of the norm. We just put a little, probably 10% more effort towards learning about investing, learning about saving, learning about these different mindset methods of frugality, minimalism, sustainability. All those things have helped us kind of focus our financial journey to financial independence. We both had student loan debt. We've had car loan debt. You've heard on our other episodes of our podcast of, where that was, what our student loan and car mishaps were and what we would do differently. And we've also had, within our 20s, we've pretty much spent majority of all that money. It's gone. So we kind of started from zero, somewhere around like 25 age. I was 26 when I found out about financial independence, retire early, read an article about a guy who retired in his 30s. So that started my journey of just putting that 10% extra effort into changing my money habits and beliefs about money so that I can focus on financial independence. So how much money do you really need to retire or make work optional, Danielle? Like, how do we figure that out?
So that is both simple and complicated. On one hand, it's pretty simple. You just take your living expenses for the whole year, or maybe add a little bit to that to give yourself some wiggle room, and then you times that by 25, and that is your FIRE number. And then depending on the allocation of that number, some of it may be, in stocks, real estate, et cetera. But what that number should be doing essentially is providing you with enough passive income where basically 4% of that number you withdraw every year to live on, which would be, your living expenses. And there are different variations of that. There's like, fat fire, which is where you actually have a larger number than maybe even what you're living on right now because you want comfort, you want to increase your spending. There's lean fire, which is just covering your bare basic minimal requirements to live. So that number would be smaller than perhaps what would be in the middle, which is a little bit of wiggle room. And that's just what I think we would call fire. Then even if you bring it down below lean fire, there's actually coast fire, which means that you've invested in all of your like retirement accounts and different vehicles to put, investments. And that will be enough for retirement, even if you don't put a single cent in for the rest of your life. So you could be coast fire by the age of 30 and never have to put a single dollar away and still be able to retire just fine at 65. And so technically you could just stop investing and just use all of your money to just live now. And some people do that. And then there's barista fire, which is a little bit before that, where you can basically retire from your current job and then have maybe a part-time job or self-employment income where it's not a lot, but it makes up the difference, that the actual amount that you've saved and invested isn't that 25 times your annual expenses. So you still need to work a little bit, or maybe you want to work for a little bit to get the health insurance. So that's what's called barista fire. So there's different levels of attaining kind of a semi-retirement or different types of retirement, whether it's like very luxurious retirement or very lean, frugal retirement. So then your number's going to change depending on which one makes sense for you.
You're saying the 4% rule. So maybe for some people that don't understand that, 4% rule is a retirement planning tool. It's a rule of thumb that dictates a retire withdrawal rate from your investment portfolios, from your retirement funds, from your net worth. In the first year, you're able to withdraw 4%, and every year after that, you can withdraw 4%. It's adjusted for inflation. So that's why we're saying 25 times your income you need to have in your net worth portfolio, and your funds will last you until, so to speak, the study, it was on like 35 years or so, but we put a little bit extra in there to cover that possibility of having a longer retirement window. I mean, if we retire at 40, we could have 40, 50 years of life that we need to live off of. But there's a lot of fire bloggers out there right now that article that I found, Retire at 30, he's been living on the 4% rule for the past 20 years and many other ones too. So it still holds true. It's interesting because when I was looking up retiring just as like a normal adulting thing, a lot of the gurus say that they want you to replace your income, not your expenses. So I thought that's really interesting because maybe today, let's say, you are a nurse who's making, like 70 grand a year, and if you were to go and talk to a retirement planner, they're going to say, okay, well, you need to replace that 70 grand. And that's actually not accurate. What you need to do is replace your expenses. Now, they typically say replace your income because they probably think that you are spending all your income. Principles of FIRE, Financial Independence, Retire Early, we try to scale back our expenses so that we can save more. So pretty much we want to save at least 50% of our income. So the 1 year that we work, we're actually be able to live off of 2 because we save 50% of that income. Now, when we reduce our expenses, that also means that you need less income to save for.
So I'm curious, I've actually heard you say that you want to do 3.5%, not 4. So I think our audience may want to know what's your plan? What's your fire number? Like, what are you thinking as far as your family?
Yeah. So that 3.5% rule rule of thumb that I came to is from an episode I heard on ScrunchyFi. They have a podcast with a lot of great information. They talk to a lot of different bloggers out there. Why we're different is because we're 2 mamas. And we're talking to women, and we're talking about financial independence, and we're talking about, getting your money straight. So on their podcast, they had a blogger on there, Big Earn. You could go check out his website. He's like I think he was like a CFO, like master's in accounting, CPA, all sorts of stuff. And he has like charts and all this information about why 3.5% withdrawal rate might be a little bit safer for the people who want to retire extremely early. So, we're marching towards that, retire at 40. So I came up with that 3.5%. I just felt like that was probably something a little bit safer. My FIRE number is about 1,400,000. That sounds unattainable, I know, but little bit at a time is what is attainable, and then investing it in the stock market so it snowballs and compounds so that I don't have to work towards. I'm not going to be able to work and actually earn $1.4 million. That's why I invested in the stock market, so that it can make up that portion. So what does that mean? That's how much money I need to have in my net worth, but what does that mean about what my expenses are for the year? So what I have figured out for my family is living off of about, I think it's $50,000, $45,000 a year. And we currently live off of way less than that. I think we're like 40,000 a year. So there's a little bit extra in there. There's, do we need to buy a new car? Or are we going to pay for kids' college, stuff like that? So there's a wiggle room. What if the stock market goes down and fluctuates? And maybe we'll have another episode about what it looks like when you withdraw from your portfolio and what to do in different scenarios. So there's going to be a little bit of buffer in there. Danielle, are you going for a 4% rule? What is your retirement number?
I'm currently doing the 4% rule just because it feels better, but I like the idea of being, more risk adverse and cautious in the 3.5. So I may adopt that. At the 4% rule, my FIRE number is 1,250,000. So a little bit less, probably, if I use your calculation, since I have a very similar living expense, right? Around 50,000. And I don't expect that to increase very much. I could potentially increase the number, although I like the idea of it being less. But also there's so many factors. My partner wants to work for the next 30 years. He's so sure. So with that in mind, I feel like it's not as important to really peg it because at least one of us is going to be working. But I'm curious, like I was talking with my parents yesterday, and my mom, for example, had never heard of any of this. And she's like, is everyone doing this? Am I just the one who never heard about this? And is everyone maxing out their accounts? And I was just like, no, I don't think so.
No.
And so I'm so curious, like, how do you even know about all of this? Like, where did this even come about for you?
Yeah, the rabbit hole of the internet. That one article just led to, so that one article was from Early Retirement Extreme. I think he retired in 5 years. He retired at 30. He was like a rocket scientist or something. So, but then it led me to Mr. Money Mustache, and then he was in IT. So, I mean, that's making some pretty good money, but he had some extreme, thoughts about the way we spend our money. Go check out his website. You're going to be like, whoa, he says your life, everything in your 20s and 30s, everything that you spend money on is just a waste. And I think that's interesting because like in a corporate environment, we're always looking at reducing waste so that we can maximize profit. We need to do the same with our life. I went to Target yesterday, had to buy some shoes for my daughter, couldn't get them at the thrift store. At her age, a lot of the shoes at the thrift store are just banged up. So anyways, so like walking through, like, no, we're not going to get that cute little thing over there. That's waste, cut. This is profit in my pocket, So that kind of helped me change my mindset around money. But then it led me to Go Great Cracker, who's another FIRE blogger who's retired. But again, he was in IT. So again, probably making a little bit higher income, but he was talking about tax advantage accounts and how you can reduce your taxes so that it increases your income. So I was like, okay, writing these things down. And then analyzing my own situation at the time, being 26 years old, I wasn't doing anything. I finally was working at a corporate company that offered a 401k. And I was like, oh God, I need to like open this. And I mentioned in a previous episode that I had another 401k when I was 17, but that was like bygone. So that just didn't stick. So just, you need to keep reiterating information. So I was working in corporate environment. So 26, started maxing out my 401k. That was in 2015. I opened up a traditional IRA. My husband opened up a traditional IRA. He didn't have any 401k options. Although when I told him about, FIRE, retire early, he went to his employer, he went to his boss and was like, hey, why can't we get a 401k? And the boss was like, oh, like 401k, that's interesting. Like they weren't even, they don't even have it, I guess. So that was kind of mind blowing.
You must be making a ton of money to be able to pull that off. So let's be honest, let's be real. Like, what has been your salary history here? Did you just graduate college and start making six figures?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In 2008, when the whole world was collapsing and I wanted to, I went into fashion, apparel manufacturing, where, they want to get everything for like 50 cents and then turn the profit so they could keep the money in their pocket. If you go and look at how much a CEO makes compared to their employees, it's like 80 to 100% more. So definitely went into the wrong field if I wanted to, make more money. But so when I got out of college, I was making about $15 an hour, and that's 30 grand a year. And I mean, today a lot of people are making $50 an hour. So maybe in 2008, that was a little bit more, but coming out of college, it just didn't sound that much more. But so I was making 30 grand. And even at that time, I mean, I didn't know about FIRE. But I was still saving money because I had these other habits before. I lived with friends and I didn't really go out and party that much. I found other ways to have fun. I mean, I lived near the beach. Like, what's wrong with going to the beach and like picnicking and all that kind of stuff? So that really helped save me some money. I was living in Southwest or Southeast Florida, like Miami, Fort Lauderdale area. So that's a higher cost of living area. But being able to control my expenses a little bit, not as much as I do today, I was still able to save some money. I think I was looking back and it was probably like, I don't know, $10,000, which is something, right? I had student loan debt, I had car loan debt. So I was just putting a little bit in each account. And then I finally got a corporate job and I got a bump in salary. So that was making 50 grand, which is probably, a little bit above a teacher salary in my area. But still higher cost of living. I'm working for a corporate. So I had access to the 401k, the HSA, but I didn't know, and I didn't do anything about it until I found, FIRE bloggers and that kind of information and how good the tax advantage accounts were. So when I discovered that information, I mean, up until then, I was living with friends still. It just was more fun. I didn't have my children until I was 30. So I know that's a little different for some people. But that doesn't mean that you actually end up saving more money because I kind of joke now that I probably save even more money because I'm like, I don't want to go out to eat with my toddler running around. And, I don't do a lot of things that I used to do and spend so much money because of my kids. I'm like making that 50 grand. And that was for a couple years, but then I quit my job. I found out about FIRE. I told my husband, before he was my husband, I told him about it. And he was like, oh my God, maybe we shouldn't quit our job. Because we wanted to quit to go and travel. But I said, this is going to be a good test. We need to figure out, like, what does it feel like not working? And if we love it so much, then it's going to give us even more of a drive to save our money. So that was like the biggest, like, defining moment of creating a why, and knowing your why really helps you stop spending habits that may not be healthy for your wallet. So when we got back, like I was contracting, wasn't making that much more than when I left. But when I got back, I was like, okay, 401k, let's do it. HSA, let's do it. Let's start contributing to these retirement accounts to get the tax advantage benefit. And let's reduce our expenses. Let's start tracking. Let's start calling and negotiating our bills, whatever we can do. Let's start house hacking. We rolled out one thing after another and had really set up a foundation. It took a while to set up that foundation. So I would say between my like 30 to 35. I mean, 5 years of like setting up a foundation of, accounts and being able to reduce our expenses and save. So that's why at this moment, I have probably like a 4-year projection to retire by 40, because we set up a foundation and now we're in that snowball, like where we are saving and investing, and that's going to snowball into that, into us being able to retire early. Okay, so Danielle, if you are going to retire early, then I think you probably work in IT. You're in Cali, you're in the Bay Area, you're like up in that corporate office overlooking that beautiful Bay Area, right?
I want to say I wish, but then I don't wish. Because I do not enjoy anything about IT or coding. That is not my personality. Sitting at a desk, working on paperwork is not my thing. I am a social worker, a licensed clinical social worker, so I do work in mental health. But
Wow.
I chose social work because I loved it, and I love it, and I love it. Being like a true social worker, usually you're like out in the field. That's been my entire life, right? Like I'm not sitting at a desk, etc. The downside, as everyone knows, with social workers, including teachers, etc., is you do not get paid for the amount of knowledge and education that you have. It is very underpaid. I don't know why, but it is. So no, I am not walking around making a ton of money. I did break into the low 6 figures a couple years ago, so I am excited about that. Although I left a higher paying job recently for a lower paying job, and so now I do make 6 figures if I hit my bonus.
Wow.
But my base salary is no longer 6 figures. So, yeah, I mean, I do understand some people definitely are not making 6 figures. That can sound like a lot of money. I've also been in my field for over 10 years, and I have a master's degree and a postmaster's license, and I live in a high cost of living area. So you have to take all of those things into account. If I lived in Kansas, I would probably not be making this amount of money, even though I have the same amount of experience and education and all of that. So I think when it comes to financial independence, your salary is important for sure. What's even more important is your savings rate. So if you can figure out a way to save 50% of your income or more, regardless of how much money you make, already you figured out how to live frugally, and you're going to have a lot of momentum building up to your FIRE number. Another important piece is age. The earlier you start, the better. I was looking at this chart, and every single blog person that we mention in this podcast is going to be in the show notes. And there is this chart that we're going to put in the show notes that shows what $1 would be if you invested it, depending on the age you are, when you're 60. So for example, if you're 18 and you invest $1 and it gains 7% interest, by the time you're 60, it's over $17 for $1. Wow. But if you do that exact same thing with the exact same interest when you're 45, it's only $2. So age and time in the market is incredibly important. Now, of course, not everyone can control how old they are. Actually, no one can, unfortunately. But I was having the same conversation with my mom, who's 67, and it convinced her to open up her first ever retirement account.
What?
You know, and her ability to save for years and years is not as long as someone who's 30, 40, or 50. There's still that benefit. But if you're hearing this and you're 20 or 30 or 40, you have this huge time horizon that can dramatically increase and snowball. And this is all due to compound interest making money off of interest, making money off of interest, making money off of interest. So when we're sitting here saying we could retire, most of that is because we started almost 10 years ago, right? Yeah. If we didn't, if we're starting today, our time horizon would be a lot different.
But you know what? I mean, we started 10 years ago, very small steps. I feel like I didn't do that much different than my peers. And if we had went 100% full speed 10 years ago, we probably could have retired in those 5-year horizon, even though we weren't earning higher income. It's all about your expenses. It's all about if you can reduce your expenses as low as possible, then you don't need to save as much, and you can still retire significantly early. So somebody who's earning, when I was earning $30,000, if I could save 50% of my income, I'm living off of 25,000, which sounds like impossible, but there's lots of people out there who's living off of $25,000. You can house hack, you can find ways to reduce your expenses for housing, transportation, and food. Those are the three biggest buckets. Everything else is negotiable within, your means.
It really depends on how much you want it,
Yeah.
It's obviously different when you have children, but if you're a single person and you're renting a whole apartment to yourself,
Yeah.
is that more important than moving toward financial independence? And if it isn't, then you're probably better off renting a room or living in a RV or whatever, figuring out a way to dramatically reduce your expenses when you're young. When you have a family, when you have 2 kids, I can't do that, right? I mean, there are people that do, but they really do it out of necessity. At this point, I wouldn't cut back that far with a family.
Yeah.
So each age has its own advantages and disadvantages. And obviously the best, most advantaged time to save money is when you're young and single, and the second best time is whatever age you are right now.
Yeah.
And whatever situation you are right now.
Right. Yeah, we really like to say, just design a sustainable lifestyle. That's what we've done. We figured out what our expense number is. We're both somewhere around 40,000. That's what makes us feel comfortable. We times that by 25. We find out how much. We use the FIRE calculator. Go check out our Instagram. We just posted, how to plug in the numbers to find out when you can retire. So you put in whatever your starting principal is. If we started with 0 right now, we would still be able to retire in 15 years on that 40 grand expenses, saving 50% of our income. So retiring starting now, we're around 35. Let's give our average age, so that's retiring at 50. That's still early. The federal is saying in order to withdraw from Social Security is like age 67 for us. So if you retire at 60, that's early. If you retire at 58, 55, 50, that's early. The numbers is easy, plugging it in, but changing your beliefs and your habits around spending money, knowing what you want to value, spending money on what you want to value. Those are the things that we like to talk about on working on. Go check out TikTok, go check out IG, check out our website. That's what we are talking about, trying to get you to change your beliefs and habits so that you can design a sustainable lifestyle, so that you can save as much money as you can, so that you can have work optional, so that you can have financial security, so that you can have that retire early if you want, so that you can ditch it all and go nomadic and travel around the world. And we're all there. I'll get rid of everything right now and go and do it.
Yeah, I guess that's really one of the first levels of FIRE that I didn't mention. There's one which is like the emergency fund, where you could technically leave your job if your boss, things aren't going well, and survive 3 months to get to another job, and then F you money.
That was me in 2016.
Yeah.
I wasn't like, F you. I was like, hey, I got enough money so that I can leave employment and go and travel and then come back and find employment again. F you, JL Collins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's enough money where you really could make a dramatic shift or just leave for a year, just do something.
Yeah.
So a little bit more than an emergency fund.
So, we're kind of on track to retire at 40, but we're kind of also CoastFi and BaristaFi. So, which means, that you said earlier, we have enough income in our account so that we don't have to contribute anymore, and we could just, lavishly spend on whatever we want. But we have these beliefs and mindsets that kind of just keep us grounded. It keeps us aligned with our values when we spend money. And BaristaFi, so I have 3 rentals. Just by that, I don't have to work. The rentals provide enough income so that it covers our expenses more than enough. So we work like that 4-hour work week. And Danielle, I know you have a private practice. So, and your husband wants to work. So, you could, quit it all and be BaristaFi just by, just by these past 10 years, it's gotten us to this BaristaFi moment. And then the next 4 years is going to get us to full retire if work optional if we want.
So what we're really trying to say here is that the average person more than likely is able to achieve what we are achieving. We are not outliers in any way as far as income. You're living in a low cost of living area. I'm living in a high cost of living area. I'm living in a smaller place than you to kind of balance that out. You get to have a little bit more space. Also, you're house hacking and have a whole Airbnb business. I don't, but I have more invested in index funds than you do. There's so many ways to slice this cake, right? And you do not have to be making six figures at all. I've only been making six figures really for the last 2 years. And because of maternity leave, I think I only really made six figures 1 year in my entire life. So, and we were living on one income, mine. Right. So that is for my entire family of 4. And we've only been living on one salary for years. So
same. Yeah, me too.
This is, we are not two, dual income family who, this is our first year of dual income. Okay.
I'm still at one and a half income, but
right, exactly. Yeah. So these are not tips on how to push yourself and grind and have 3 full-time jobs and figure it out and you'll sleep later. We still have work-life balance. I don't work more than 40 hours a week ever. I spend a ton of time with my kids. I homeschool my kids. We're still going on vacations. We're not eating food from the dumpster at Safeway, you probably don't have Safeway. But so this is achievable and we want everyone to know that. And just because it's achievable doesn't mean it's easy to change their behavior or to do what we talk about. And I think that's why we're here and why we keep putting out episodes and why we keep putting out content, because it's not super easy to make that shift. So we're here for you and we're going to try to help you as much as we can, because moms need to know this. If more moms knew this, then more moms could potentially have more time with their kids, have better quality of life, maybe take a break, take their family on more vacations while house hacking. Like, this can improve your quality of life. So I think we're really passionate about this to say that for the vast majority of people living in the United States, this is relatively achievable. Maybe not in the exact same time frame as us. Maybe if you're older, it's going to be different. But for the vast majority of young professional families, this is achievable.
If you have enjoyed the show, please share with another Scrunchy Mama and hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. For show notes, resources, and links to our other video shorts, check out our website, ScrunchyFi.com.